Hello everyone, this is Data Talks presented by Dun Bradstreet. I'm your host, George LaRue. I'm a principal consultant for data strategy in the advisory services team here at Dun Bradstreet. In advisory services, our team is dedicated to helping our clients maximize the value of their relationship with Dun Bradstreet through expert advice and consultation. And on Data Talks, I get to chat each episode with one of the expert advisors at Dun Bradstreet about a topic that can help consumers of our data and services to get more value. Today's guest expert is Susan Wellenkamp. Susan is a data strategy consultant at Dun Bradstreet. Susan, tell me, how long have you been with the company?
Oh, goodness. Can we say just over 30 years?
We can say however you'd like.
Yeah, let's go with that. It's been a while, but I've been in many different jobs. But all with Dun Bradstreet.
Can you tell me a little bit about the work that you do in your role as a data strategy consultant right now?
Absolutely. I work closely with Fortune 1000 companies in bringing together their information with Dun Bradstreet information to drive business efficiencies and really using information to drive knowledge and actions in the marketplace.
That's great. Susan, one offering that we've been talking about a lot inside of our team recently, and with our clients as well, is what we call ELI. But what is ELI?
Well, ELI stands for Extended Linkage Insight, and it is one of the new solutions that Dun Bradstreet has brought to the marketplace. And I will add that it is something that our customers have been asking for years and years and years. Dun Bradstreet is very well known for its legal linkage. Legal linkage is really defined as where one company owns greater than 50% of another company.
What does extended linkage insights bring beyond the legal linkage?
Exactly. So what extended linkage does is it brings together entities that may not be legally linked, but have similarities. It could be alternative relationships like franchisees, franchisors, dealerships, agencies, healthcare. It could be a number of different relationship types that, and then on top of that, extended linkage also brings together through modeling entities that may have affiliations with the parent company, with the bigger structure, the bigger organization.
Can you give me an example of what that modeled linkage might look like?
Absolutely. So what we do is we use evidence scores. So one of the things that ELI does is it creates a brand name. And it will look at all of the legally linked entities and create a brand name for those, and then go out into the universe of businesses and identify other businesses that may look similar. They may have similar names, they may have similar industries, they may be in the same location, they may have the same domain. There are actually 11 different evidence scores in ELI that basically bring these groupings together that we can then provide to our customers to understand their expanded relationships.
And I would imagine that the strength of those scores and what they look like in combination with each other, we can use those to help explain to clients just how confident we are in that extension of the family tree.
That's exactly right. There's something that we call a source code that basically takes those 11 evidence scores and with the values, the grades that are in those evidence scores combined together will predict the likelihood, the higher confidence that yes, in fact, this entity should be considered a part of the broader entity.
So you and I, in talking with clients and just really playing with it ourselves inside of Dun and
Hmm.
Bradstreet, can see just how powerful this extension can be. Is there a reason that we keep it separate from the standard legal linkage?
Well, legal linkage is absolutely crucial to customers. If you're looking at a financial use case, as a for instance, they need to know who has financial obligation for a particular deal. Um, if the company is having difficulties paying, who is the organization that owns this other company? So legal linkage is an absolute must. ELI associations are looser than the legal linkage and um, would include things like, and I had mentioned this before, affiliations through franchisees, through agencies, through dealerships, where you've got a relationship with another business, but there's not a legal ownership. So we with ELI will tell you that.
So Eli really, because it includes the legal linkage plus all this additional stuff, it's more of a supplement to our standard legal linkage. It's not a replacement.
It is not, it is absolutely not a replacement. It is used to augment the legal linkage and do it with eyes wide open. So if you're using a financial use case, you really would use ELI data in a different way than, say, if you were a marketing use case, like a go to market use case, where you're defining territories or, who owns what account and how are we going to divvy the accounts up. Here you might be looser in the way you're defining those relationships where you want Joe's territory to include all of the pieces of that organization, whether it's legally linked or not.
When you talk about tighter versus looser, that's not a binary decision, though. We've got a dial essentially that clients can use to say just how loosely they want to incorporate extended linkage information.
That's absolutely right. There's a source code that ranges from a 3 at the lowest to a 6 at the highest. And again, those evidence scores feed into that. And what you're able to do is look specifically at the source code that's associated to a particular record and decide whether you want to include that or not. There are times I've got a customer who uses the extended linkage, and as a for instance, they will pull for their use cases everything that is a 5, a source code of a 5 or higher, and really leave the 3s and the 4s to manual stewardship, where if they've got a particular account that they're reviewing, they would have stewards looking at those lower source codes.
So it's, as with most things, it's a combination, a little bit of science and a little bit of art, where you can auto
Hmm.
accept some things and say we have to leave the decisions to humans on some of these other things.
That's right.
So
That's right.
what are some of the other use cases we've seen? We've talked about financial a little bit. We talked about marketing, go to market type things.
Hmm.
Another area where I think we've seen some success with it is in things like vendor management on that supply side.
Exactly. That's just what I was going to say. Vendor management is a very strong use case. I had a customer who was using extended linkage to pull together all of their vendors. And part of the challenge with legal linkage was, as a for instance, let's use an example. Um, they do a lot of or they did a lot of business travel before COVID hit, and one of their big vendors was Hilton Hotels. As you may well know, Hilton Hotels is made up of corporate owned locations, but many of them are franchisees. when this customer was looking to understand all of the spend that they do with Hilton, they don't care whether it's legally owned or if it's a franchise. When they're going in and they're negotiating with Hilton for the discounted rate, they want to show all of the spend that they're bringing to that organization. And so ELI just was perfect for the vendor application.
That's a great example. And I think between the several examples we've talked about, it really illustrates some of the power of ELI to our clients. And so I
Mm-hmm.
guess if there's someone out there who's not using extended linkage insights and thinks this could be something that could really help them, what do they need to do in order to be able to start using it? What's the interface like for extended linkage insights?
We provide extended linkage through flat files that you could get on a monthly, on a quarterly basis, or you could get it through APIs. And basically, what you want to think about is what is the universe of businesses? Do you want everything that DNB knows about the ELI universe? Or is it certain geographies? Is it a list of your top 2,000 customers or your top 2,000 vendors? Um, how do you want to define it? There's a lot of flexibility when it comes to defining the specific universe that you're going to take.
Are you able to quantify at all, even in general terms, what some of the benefits are that our clients have seen as a result of beginning to use ELI where they hadn't before?
Absolutely. We did a research study as we were coming to market with the ELI data, and we've estimated what you want to understand is customers are doing this. Businesses are using DNB's legal linkage, but they're augmenting themselves records that they think should be part of the relationship. There's a lot of cost associated to doing that manual work. And the study that we did showed that about 70% of that cost could be avoided, which is huge.
It is.
Now, that's not to say that there's not still some work that needs to be done. Um, it's ELI is a great starting point, but there still might be more that is out there that you want to bring in. Um, Basically, if the evidence scores are not high enough, then we might not bring certain entities into the relationship. You may find that, but one of the really cool things about ELI is there's a feedback evidence score where we will take that feedback in and build it into ELI so it's constantly learning.
That is really neat, and to know that it's not just a finish it, we think we're done, but it's an evolving, it's a growing, it's a learning
Mm-hmm.
tool for our customers to be able to use. Susan, as we wrap up, what's the one thing that you hope people who are watching this or listening to this might walk away from this conversation with?
Um, I think it's really around the efficiencies that leveraging the ELI content can bring to bear. It is the cost avoidance. You're probably doing some level of this work today, and basically D&B can bring you on a platter a lot of that work so that instead of you having to create it yourself, we're bringing it to you and you're just dealing with potentially some exceptions.
Well, Susan, I really appreciate you taking time today to sit with me and chat about this topic. I hope that it's been really useful to a lot of the people watching or listening.
That's great. Thank you so much, George.
Our guest expert today has been Susan Wellenkamp, a data strategy consultant at Dun Bradstreet, and this has been Data Talks. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and if you have, I encourage you to share it with a friend or a colleague. And for more information about what we've discussed on today's episode, please visit www.dnb.com or talk to your company's Dun & Bradstreet representative today. I'm George LaRue. Thanks for joining us. Until next time.